Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedikt, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hello, Benny. I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Fantastic.
I don't have anything prepared for today's banter. I hope you are more prepared than I am in that regard. Usually you have some surprise story up your sleeve, something that you only tell me in the second episode or by the end of it or something that like, how the hell could you keep that for so long? But like nothing like that today?
No, I laid pretty low last week, honestly. And it's killing me because there's so much stuff I want to talk about the show I was just away traveling on, but I still am not allowed to bring it up on a recorded episode. So it's just got to wait.
Okay, yeah. Fine. I can't wait for you to drop this, by the way. I have so many questions and I want to know all the things, but yeah, understandably, you can't at this point.
All in good time.
Yeah. All right. So, but I know, and I don't know if you want to or can or want to share this, but you just told me something before we started this episode, which I find is pretty exciting. It's about a band that is actually listening to the show, and I really want to share this with people. Yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so if you know what, they've been kind of friends of the podcast for a while now, but this band I work with quite a bit named Wet Future. We actually I did an episode on the podcast interviewing them because they're kind of like a perfect poster child of a band that has taken what we teach through this podcast and applied it and gotten really great results. They've gotten some radio play and stuff, and they're a self-recording band, so that's great. And then more recently, we did our Mixes Unpacked mix walkthrough course, and I chose to do one of their songs. So if you got that, you're also familiar with Wet Future. And yeah, great band. I love working with them, and they record themselves and listen to this podcast and implemented it really, really well. And anyways, I got another song to mix. I think it's the last song for the album they're putting out, and sent it to my mix assistant, Stacy, to prep it. And Stacy sent it back and said, "Looks great. Here's everything you need." And by the way, whoever engineered this did a killer job. And I was like, well, that's amazing because they engineered it and they do all the stuff we talk about on this podcast. It's just kind of like a reassuring thing because Stacy's great. He gets really high quality tracks, and I send him tracks that get sent to me by, bona fide big recording studios and producers and stuff like that. And here comes the band that recorded themselves and sent me the tracks, and he's like, "These are amazing." It's like, yes, they are. They're damn good. So wanted to give Wet Future a shout out and congratulations on doing a killer job, and also tell everybody that's listening to this, if you actually do the things we say on this, you're going to get some really good results.
Yes, this is what I wanted to share with people, and of course, absolutely well-deserved shout out, Wet Future. You're awesome. I really enjoyed the mix walkthrough that you did with their song, but I really wanted to tell that to people, to share that with people, because that maybe you now believe that it's actually possible to get better, to take these things, implement them, and actually get results. And so maybe this is the story you needed to hear. And I'm stoked to hear things like that. I really love hearing things like that. It's similar to when people tell me that they, when mixers tell me that they've mastered a song themselves, and they did a mastering shootout against $1 million mastering specialists and mastering studios, and their master won against those, or so. These are all they did was just throw a limiter on it or something. I mean, they did it properly, but these are the stories that I really like. I really like challenging the status quo, or like doing something doing a lot with a little, basically. So hearing somebody say like, "Who engineered this? This is killer," and coming from somebody who is also hearing like really well engineered records is really cool. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
But
totally.
Those types of things.
Good news all around, right? And that's what this whole podcast is about, being able to record yourself DIY to a professional level, and having examples we can point to and be like, there it is, it's on the radio. That's as much it's just so spot on, and it's really rewarding for Benny and I to see it happen as well.
Absolutely. Totally agreed. Very cool. So one way, actually, this is a great segue now. But I really think it is actually one way for you to make that a little more likely and to supercharge your growth and to up your skills, level up your skills, and get to the point where your song could be played on the radio. One way to accomplish that is to go to the selfrecordingband.com/call and schedule a completely free feedback and coaching call with me, where I can give you feedback. I can tell you how far you might be away or how close you might be to making a really professional sounding record yourself. I can give you feedback. I can give you action steps. I can tell you what I would do next. We can sort of discuss a potential roadmap for you. We can discuss where you are now, where you want to be, whether or not I can help you get there. And all of this is completely free. Let's talk for an hour. Go to the selfrecordingband.com/call. And I'm excited to hear about you, your music, and your goals. And I truly think this is one of the fastest ways, actually, to make sure you're moving into the right direction and to supercharge your growth as a DIY artist. So go there, please.
Absolutely do that. If there's one more thing I can fit into this little intro, is that I just mentioned that What Future was previously on a Mixes Unpacked. I think probably by the time this episode is out, you'll already know about this, but just in case you haven't, you should go check out our new Mixes Unpacked Volume 2, where Benny and I are walking through 2 mixes we've respectively done for 2 new songs. So it's a whole new bundle. So if you got the last one, you'll love this one. And if you just want to jump in on this new one, you can just see if these songs are the ones for you and get in on it. I just finished filming mine. I'm so excited with how it's turning out. I forgot how much fun I had mixing this song. So there'll be more on that. There might be a podcast out about me interviewing the artists I worked with and Benny as well doing that. So probably by the time you're hearing this, you already know what I'm talking about. But if not, make sure you check out Mixes Unpacked.
Absolutely do it. This is such a cool thing, such a fun thing that we do now, because this not only, that way, you not only hear us talk about how cool these bands are and what a professional sounding record could sound like, but you actually hear what it sounds like. You actually hear what the standard is and what we can do with the tracks that are being sent to us, where the challenges are, what's good about them, what's not so good about them, all those things. You can, and you just have a reference, I think, and you see what actually happens to your tracks when they are mixed properly, which will tell you a lot about how you need to engineer things. And of course, if you want to mix yourself, you'll see the techniques and tools that we use too. So I think this is a really great concept. And if you haven't yet, definitely check out Mixes Unpacked. It won't be the last one. By the time this episode airs, there should be 2, and we'll plan on doing more of these. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Now, episode of today is about pitch, tuning, intonation, all of those things, making sure things are in tune. If you've listened to us for a while, you know how important this is to us. And this is something that matters with guitars, bass, vocals, any sort of melodic instrument. And we're going to talk about, this is going to be this is going to be to the point, a very actionable episode, because we're going to talk about 10 hacks or ways, or I just like the word hacks because I think actually, sorry, before I give you the title of the episode, I think our most popular episode today is the one that we called recording hacks or mixing hacks. I think we did 2 of them or so. And I totally believe that these are the most popular episodes just because of the word hacks in the title. I totally believe that.
People are a sucker for that word.
So we do another one of these, and it's called 10 tuning or pitch or intonation. I don't know what it's going to be called actually. Hacks to make your tracks sit perfectly and avoid problems later in the process. So 10 hacks to make sure things are in tune.
Now, I just want to point out that you have a dad pun alternative title up there that I personally really liked, and it's Pitch is Key. Get it? Music key, the key of the song. Pitch is key.
Oh, shit. Yeah, you're totally right.
I was like, it's amazing.
Wow, pitch is key. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's got to stay in there.
Maybe we can do 10 tuning intonation hacks to make your track sit perfectly and avoid problems later in the process. Bracket pitch is key.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe even longer. But totally. But we should keep the pitch is key thing. Yes, totally. But 10 hacks has to be in there as well. Just to prove my point here and see if that episode's going to be the new most popular one. Anyway, what might prevent that from happening is the fact that people don't really like talking or doing or I don't know, working on this. For whatever reason, it's not a very popular topic. So this might prevent this episode from becoming very popular. And that's unfortunate because key, intonation, and pitch is really, really important. And there are multiple reasons for why things are still not in tune often when people send us stuff, but it happens all the time, unfortunately. So that's why I know for some reason people that either don't hear it or they don't know what to do about it, or they don't think it's as that important, but it really is. So we definitely want to talk about this because people send me out of tune tracks all the time. And no matter what I do in the mix, tracks like that will never sit right and sound great, even if it's subtle. Sometimes there are situations where things can be a little more raw and don't need to be very perfect. That's totally true. I totally get that. But often, even if it's subtle and you think it's not going to matter, it matters because it can be a distraction and hurt the overall quality of the mix. And no matter how good of a job you do mixing, if something is just slightly out of tune, it doesn't sit well in the mix, people will notice. They might not be able to put their finger on it, but they're going to notice when they listen to the song. It's going to feel weird and distracting, and it won't connect emotionally as well. And it also won't sound as great. It's really true. So this is really, really important. And I know, Malcolm, that you believe that too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're both pretty particular when it comes to pitch. Pitch is hard, and it's the hard thing that people don't want to work on, but it's so essential. It is, I think, one of the main primary indicators of a professional mix versus an unprofessional product is how much attention was paid to pitch during the engineering and recording of the song.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So, which is also why I tell people when they send me stuff like that, if I can't fix it, and I will make them re-record, or I at least want to have a conversation about it because I just can't ignore that sort of stuff. So yeah, and you can save yourself. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, case in point, last week I got sent a song to mix, and I just called up the artist and said, hey, we just got to do a quick guitar session because this could be amazing, and it's not. And we're just going to quickly, just going to show them, this is how I would do it. It's not going to take long at all, but we can level this up very, very quickly. And they were like, great, let's do it. Because they wanted to be awesome, right? And it just wasn't. It's just out of tune. And so I'm going to show them in that case, but in this case, we're going to tell you on a podcast how to fix this too.
Yeah, and that will save you from running into that exact problem and then having to redo everything after you've consolidated and sent out your files, and all you want to do is now hear the mix. If you don't want to redo things at this stage of the process, then this is for you. So 10 hacks. Now, you want to start? I start. I don't mind. Malcolm, how are we going to do this?
All right, I'll go first.
Yes.
So up first is programming MIDI scratch tracks as a tuning reference. There's so many good reasons to do this. First off, MIDI is pretty quick to be able to get something down, and it's going to have really good timing, and it's going to have really perfect pitch, and that is going to just make it so easy to track the rest of your song to. So huge fan of that. A good example might be doing a MIDI bass track or something that you can have just living in the session as a tuning reference for the rest of the song. Or some people use a synth sound or keys. There's even pretty solid MIDI guitars nowadays you could do it with, but having some kind of MIDI scratch tracks as a starting point is going to yield really good results.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, nothing to add there. Just replace them, and you have something to compare against. And when in doubt, especially after long sessions when the ears are already tired, or also with low-tuned instruments where it's just hard to hear pitch, MIDI can help a lot. It's just a great reference. All right.
Yeah. So real quickly, just in case there's somebody that's listening that is, what do you mean reference the MIDI tracks? It means that when you're recording, say, a guitar, for example, a real guitar to your scratch tracks, if it sounds out of tune against whatever MIDI instruments you've laid down, you're not in tune. You have to. I just got to say, Benny, if it looks like that's a giant bottle of vodka.
I was about to say something about that. I was about to say, just so you know, I'm not drinking vodka, because you're not the first person to tell me that. Brian said that, and a lot of other people too. Actually, people have reached out to me asking if I drink vodka on my videos. It has happened. It never came to mind that this could be a thing, but in Germany, we have big bottles of water in glass bottles. They look like this. It's water.
That's awesome.
And I drink it's natural, non-sparkling water. I drink out of these bottles all day.
You're incredibly articulate for somebody drinking vodka while they podcast. All right, cool. So back to what I was saying. If you are, you're recording your actual guitar take, you just check that it sounds in tune against whatever MIDI instruments you've laid down. And if it does, you're in tune. If it doesn't, you need to work on the intonation of that instrument you're playing. And so just always treat that MIDI instrument as the tuning king. That's your master.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't really matter which type of instrument you use. I mean, if you don't have like a good MIDI guitar plugin, I mean, there aren't really good MIDI guitar plugins, but if you, at least in my opinion, but if you think you can't do that because you don't have that, just program something. Could be some chords on a synth, just something you can compare your recordings to and see if they're in tune or not.
Yeah. Or one pro tip is that some instruments can intentionally be out of tune. So if it's like a piano and there's a detune knob or something to make it sound honky tonk, that's not a great reference.
No, exactly, absolutely. All right, now the second one, and I mean, I don't know if that's general advice or a lot of people do it, but I think it helps. I think if you turn down your monitoring volume, I think that this helps a lot. Like for me, when I listen to music for longer periods of time at a high volume, back when I had bands in the room and I was tracking a lot and we were cranking things just because the band wanted to feel it, and tracking sessions are usually always louder than mixing sessions.
Yep.
And if I do that for a while, I find myself being less sensitive to these tuning issues. And when I turn down the volume and or take a quick break and then listen at quiet volume, all of a sudden those lead notes or whatever, the single notes on the guitar that seemed perfectly fine before now are definitely out of tune. And it's a weird, I don't know what it actually is, but at least to me, it's probably ear fatigue, or it's like it just feels better when things are loud. I don't know. But for me, whenever I turn down things, I notice things that I haven't noticed before while I was still cranking it up. So
yep, agree. You just hear better at lower volumes. It's kind of a known thing. So you have to resist the urge to crank it all the time.
Yeah.
And there's so many other benefits to doing that too. So just do it.
True.
All right. Okay. Up next is check things in solo or in small groups with different volume balances. So a quiet, out-of-tune background thing might become much more obvious in the mix. Or kind of sometimes the opposite. Sometimes something seems in tune in the mix, but if you actually fix it, it's like, oh, that is so much better. You can't even tell why. It just kind of falls into place. Bass guitar is really a killer for this. Bass is kind of hard to tell that it's out a little bit until you fix it, and then you fix it, and you're like, oh, the whole bottom end, low end of my mix just came together. It's really not uncommon for me to tune bass that gets sent to me for mixing. In a perfect world, it would already be great. But it's just kind of one of those overlooked things. So I'm kind of constantly cleaning that up.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. And one situation that happens quite often is that people send me stuff that is cool and in tune. And then there's these little add-ons or things that are often an afterthought in the session, or little tiny ear candy things that they do in the background, or a double here and another harmony here or something. And it's supposed to be quiet in the mix, so they don't really pay attention. And overall, it seems kind of fine. But then in the mix, everything gets obviously, hopefully, a little more defined and clear. And then when it comes to mix notes, discussing the mix, and then they're like, hey, can we turn this background harmony up a little bit? And then I'm like, yeah, I wish I could, but I can't really because it's like not in tune, So I want to avoid these situations because take everything seriously. Like even these small add-ons you do at the end of the sessions, they might be an afterthought or a spontaneous idea, but still make sure that those are in tune and listen to those things on their own or in small groups of instruments, as we said here, because in the context of the full thing, you might not notice, but once it's clearer and mixed, those things will come up, and then you have a problem. So this is just something pretty common, I think, that some of those background things that people for some reason don't think they need to be in tune, or also vocal doubles sometimes. They just do a sloppy, quick double take, and it's not a good idea to do that. I mean, you can tune things, but still take it seriously and listen to things in solo. If it's just to check pitch and
So all things in a production are compounding. So we've talked about why we edit drums before we record everything else is because those little timing discrepancies are going to compound it. Every layer, every new instrument we add is going to make that worse and worse and worse. And all of a sudden, what was just a little ahead on one instrument is now way ahead of the other instrument that's a little late, right? So this becomes a mess. And it is the same with tuning. If you have a bass and a guitar that are just a little out, it's like, okay, well, that's fine. But now we add a piano that's just somewhere else. And then a vocal that's, that little bit out as well. All of a sudden, you've got a problem. So the more tracks you add, the more important it is that you've been diligent this whole way along. So when you are doing those little final thoughts, like a little guitar harmony, or like you said, like just an add-on vocal double or harmony that's just meant to be in the background, it's the most imperative that they are the most accurate thing happening, really, because at that point in the game, there's so many layers that if it's not great, it's going to be bad sounding.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Okay, nothing to add?
Yeah.
The next thing is, and I had to put it in there on this list, Malcolm. The next hack here is to record, but I put something in brackets.
I see it.
Yeah, exactly. So next hack here is record guitars before bass, period.
There's no period on the outline.
No, at least scratch tracks. So there you go. I believe this is the only way, but I believe you have to track guitars before bass just because of that reason. No, there's other reasons too, but no, you don't have to do that actually. But it helps. What I want to say is, Malcolm, you said it before, it's kind of hard to tell when bass is out of tune oftentimes. So what helps me, at least often, is to track guitars first and then track the bass to the guitars, because then you're going to hear that the bass is out of tune. If you track bass first, then it might be difficult to judge that. But a scratch track will do too. So you can have a scratch track or a MIDI tuning reference or scratch guitars, record bass to that and then record the proper guitars. I still believe it's better to record guitars first, but there you go.
So it goes without saying that I'm the opposite. So I should clarify though, if you record bass first, I do tune it before guitars go down.
Yeah.
So in my process, now my bass is like a tried and true tuning reference.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, no right or wrong here, absolutely not. But have
as long as it's in tune, there's no right or wrong.
Yes, exactly. The point is just have a tuning reference, and for me, this is often just guitars. I find it easier to judge that, but scratch tracks will do. It's just one hack. You could try it. Maybe it works for you too. So that's why I put it on this list. Now, do you do the next one, Malcolm?
Not usually. No.
Not usually? Okay.
But I don't think that means it's not a good, valuable move. Like, it's a tool that you can use if you need to hear something.
Okay. So the next one would be listen to your clean DIs. I mean, I don't listen to them all the time, obviously. There are people who do. Like, there are engineers who make people play and listen to just the DIs instead of an amp, which is kind of wild to me, but it happens. But I think there's value in checking the DIs real quick, at least when in doubt. Sometimes there are parts where, I don't know what that is, but when I just hear the clean DI, I mean, I know what it is. If I hear the clean DI with all the added harmonic content from the amp, then some tuning issues become more obvious, or it's easier for me to really spot the problem, to isolate the problem. Maybe it's also that. So sometimes I just love to listen to the clean DIs of guitars, and then it will become pretty obvious if there are tuning issues or not. Yeah. It's also good for other reasons. Sometimes just the attacks and the timing and all of that. Sometimes it just pays off to really check what's going on in the DIs and if they are really, really great, because an amp can, make things sound prettier or like hide some of the flaws.
Yeah, it can totally hide stuff. This brings up a good point, though. Like you said, you use the DI to kind of hone in on what the issue is. And I do want to point out that I think a lot of people think that by tuning the open strings of their guitar, they should be in tune, which we've tried to kind of dispel that that's not enough over and over again. But I want to point out that you sometimes have to purposely be out of tune. So if your main rhythm guitars were, a three-saddle telly or something, you might have like some notes in a chord that are a little sharp, and they sound great on that guitar performance, but you have to overdub to them with a different guitar. You have to figure out what notes sharp and match it. It's all about relatively being in tune with whatever is already there. So listening to the DI of that guitar might be easier to figure out, okay, I think it's like the third that is like a little sharp. So we're going to match that on our next guitar performance to kind of sync it up. Stuff like that. The DIs, like, that's getting really surgical, but that's kind of what it takes, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. That's why it's there. Cool.
All right. So then we've got tuning individual chords and notes if necessary. This blows people's brains when I make them do it, but you might have to hold a chord, and this kind of requires two people sometimes. They're holding the chord and plucking it, and you're tuning every single note of that chord for them as they hold it. And it's like, keep your hands how they are, don't hold softer or tighter. And we tune that one note, and then I click record, and they punch in that one chord. I say, all right, grab your next chord. And we do it all over again. We tune every note, every string of that next chord, punch in just that. You know, it can be a single note if it's for solos that you just can't get right. It's whatever it takes, and it can take a lot and a long time.
And unfortunately, I've made plenty of records, not plenty of records, but a few records in the past where I should have done more of that, where I just didn't know about it or didn't take it as seriously or didn't hear it as well as I do now. But there are some records that I made when I listen to them now, it's kind of, I wish we would have done that again. Would have been so easy to fix that, but I just didn't. So I don't want you to feel that way in a few years when you listen to your music that you've made. So just avoid that. So I didn't do that for the longest time, but it's so easy to do, and might take a while, like take time, but it's not hard to do. It's just something you just gotta get through it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Now the next one is, that's also one that's often overlooked, and that is tune like you play. So that means when you are sitting down while you record, also tune sitting down, not standing up, and vice versa. Thing is, it will really be different, because when you're sitting down, you're gonna hold the guitar differently. There's gonna be pressure on some part of the guitar, which will bend the thing out of tune. There's gravity, even that makes a difference, believe it or not. Like, the angle that you hold the guitar, all these things really make a difference. I've tried that because guitar techs have been telling me that, and I couldn't believe it, but it's true. If you hold the guitar differently, chances are it's slightly out of tune. So tune like you play. That also means if you play a very soft part, tune while hitting the string softly. And if you play a really hard part, and if you pick really hard, tune while picking hard. With a perfectly set up guitar, this shouldn't be much of an issue, but it oftentimes still is. So especially with low tunings, like when you have a low tuning and maybe the strings are not quite thick enough, or you prefer a little bit of lighter strings, if you hit the strings hard, they will go sharp for a short amount of time, and the attack will be a little sharp. And if you know that the part you're going to be tracking is you hitting hard, and you're playing, I don't know, chucks or something, and you're playing, I don't know, 8th notes, so there's no sustained note, and it's all hard chucks, then maybe tune hitting hard and hitting fast. And when you have chords that ring out and you just hit the strings lightly, then tune that way, because otherwise it will be sharp or flat. It's just a normal thing that happens all the time.
Yeah, totally. That maybe add a quick note here, but it's like having good posture while you play. And it's just what you said. Like if you're leaning back, people do this all the time. They're just like almost reclined. Your guitar is going to go sharp. Like you can just experiment, grab a guitar, flip it so that its strings are facing right up, and hit a note, and it'll be a little sharp, just because of like the pull of the weight of the guitar wanting to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Now, do you use the next one? I know you don't, but what do you use?
No, I do. I use a strobe tuner. Yep.
Really? I thought. Haven't we talked about this? Or maybe
I use the Kemper tuner, but it has a strobe mode, which I like to use. But I'm not super, like, if a band can't figure it out, I don't worry about it too much. I usually try to get them, because honestly, it's really simple to figure out how to use a strobe tuner. It's really not confusing at all, but some people really just can't get their head around it. So I'm not going to beat them up about it. I just go back to the little floating bubble and we make it work. But yeah, strobe tuners, they're great. They just work better.
Yes, and real strobe tuners, where there's tuners that have a strobe mode, but which is not really a strobe tuner on the inside. It's not more accurate than whatever other display they have. There are plugins that simulate that, but if it's a real strobe tuner, it's also really more accurate. Like I don't know about the Kemper one, how accurate that is, or if that is one or whatever, but even like the strobe mode helps. But like if you have a Peterson, for example, strobe tuner that is like, I don't know, the 100th of a cent or whatever, 1,000, I don't know, like ridiculously small amount. Good. Yeah. It's almost impossible to get the thing to stand still. Like it's almost impossible. But So it can be annoying. I see why people maybe not use them live, because you will be tempted to always get it perfect and you never do. So it can be quite frustrating. But in the studio, they are really, really good tools. And if you know how to use them, it's not hard, really not. So bottom line, if you can use a strobe tuner, I really love, and I'm not, this episode or this podcast is not sponsored by anybody, but Peterson Strobo Stomp, I think it's called Strobo Stomp HD or so. It's the Stomp strobe tuner. They have a desktop one that's not really practical for most bands when they want to use it live, but they have a Stomp version that's built like a tank. It has a great, huge display that you can read even if you're standing, I don't know how far away. It's well lit, so it has all the features that you want from a good live tuner, but it's also super accurate because it's an actual strobe, and it's not crazy expensive. So I have one of those in the studio, and I love it. So
yeah, that's a great choice. The Kemper is definitely like one of my favorite tuners. I use it as a tuner even if I'm not using it. It's just, that's my tuner. And then I know there's one more, like a plugin that's actually quite recommended, and I can't think what it is, but I'm pretty positive that Diego, in our episode with Diego, which, let's just do it. Let's find out what episode that was.
Yep. And I know what plugin it was, and it's not something you would think of, because I know one of his recommendations was the Polytune plugin by, I think it's TC Electronics. So there's the Polytune pedal, which is not really super accurate.
I don't like it at all.
Nope, exactly. Not really accurate, but for some reason, the plugin is. So Diego was mentioning that he says like he would never use the pedal, but he definitely uses the plugin. I haven't tried it, but I trust Diego. So if you have that or want to get that, so apparently that's a very accurate tuner. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So that, just for your reference, that was episode 47, Guitar Setup and String Choices with Diego Casillas. He is the bomb. That episode is so darn good. Yeah, and we actually talk about a lot of the stuff, like a lot of what we're talking about is kind of explained in through technique in that episode, a very technical episode.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so use a good tuner or a strobe ideally.
Yeah, and then after that, we've got...
Talk about the next one, Malcolm.
All right, for sure. Yeah. We've got optimizing the singer's headphone mix for intonation. So when you're singing, you really need to be able to hear what you need to sing to. If you've got a big drum heavy mix, it's going to be pretty much like fishing in the dark or shooting in the dark. I don't know what that phrase is anymore. But fishing in the dark might be hard too. I'm not sure. Haven't tried it. But
there's these small green lights. I don't know the English word for that, but like the small that anyway, you can see the bait in the dark. I'm a vegan now, but I used to fish before I turned vegetarian and vegan. So,
you can't fish in the dark, apparently. But I think, essentially, it's going to be a lot easier to sing if you have a melodic instrument to sing to. So building a headphone mix for the vocalist to sing to, maybe turning up the bass so the root notes are more prominent. You can program a melody for them to sing to. That's actually a very common technique. It's like, does program a piano playing the melody, and they just sing to that. If you've done vocal lessons, you've probably done that. That's like a very common vocal lesson technique for singers to teach you how to sing, is using piano melodies, and so that's very effective as well. Removing things that aren't important. If there's like a weird kind of dissonant harmony that might make it harder to sing the note they need, you can just mute that for them. And you might need to put in an instrument that won't even be in the final mix, whatever really they need to get it done. Yeah,
period. And I don't know about the whole, I added this bass up for root notes thing. So turn up the bass or turn up any, what I mean by that is basically turn up any instrument that gives you the chord progression in a very simple, easy to hear way. It could be a rhythm guitar, could be the bass oftentimes, just something that's not distracting, that you can clearly follow along sort of and and adapt to. I think that sometimes really helps. It doesn't help to have like complicated guitar layers. Sometimes just the clear bass note is really what you need, or any sort of melodic rhythm instrument. And it's individual too. I think everybody will like, some people will perform better when they hear a certain thing, and other people will need different things. Just pay attention to that and experiment, because I've really experienced it where changing the headphone mix completely changed the performance when it comes to pitch. Like, it was almost impossible to hit a certain note before we made the change. Now we made this change, and all of a sudden it's very easy for the singer to hit that note for whatever reason. Like, it makes a difference. Totally.
Definitely. And now advanced mode on this. This won't be for everyone, but if you can, do this, build a mix that is tailored to your singer, but also maintain control of what you're hearing for your own mix, like monitoring mix. And that might need to be totally different. For me, it's like really essential that I'm hearing those vocals in like a rough mix of the song with all the elements there. I need to hear that they're in tune against all of those things, like we've been talking about. It's like I need to know that it is going to be in tune with those harmonies. It is going to be in tune with all those guitar layers. They might not need that to get that done, but I need to like be double checking that it is in something of a finished product. So that might be different for you, but just make sure that you're able to tell, like, because you're really the one giving them feedback as they're recording their vocals. Like, make sure that you're able to actually know for certain that what they are doing is what you need.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure you to pay attention and do that. And also, it helps to have some. It's not on our list here, but it helps to have some. When it comes to vocals, do you have some at least theoretical vocal skills or like knowledge of how to reach certain notes, or maybe some techniques? It helps to maybe even take vocal lessons, or just learn about that. Maybe read, I don't know, do something so that you can, when you're engineering and somebody else is singing, so that you can sort of guide them a little bit. You don't have to be a perfect singer yourself, but you have to have a tool. There's like a bag of tools or tricks that you can use, and you have to be able to coach people. That's actually a big part of any vocal session, is the motivational and psychological, mental aspect, but then also guiding them, coaching them through the performance. And you need to have these tricks, and things that you can then try and use. I think this really is kind of important. And one thing that I saw, it's another video that I saw on social media the other day, is by Matt Ramsey, who we had on the podcast. He's a vocal coach, and he made this video about a technique he's called the plane technique. I think was what he was calling it. That's just one example of that, where he says a lot of people are struggling to reach notes that are close to their limits, like in the upper range of their voice, like the really high notes. They can sing them, but it's kind of hard to reach them. And many people will just put a lot of energy into these notes, and they will still be a little flat, and you can hear that it's exhausting, and they can't quite reach it. You know, that phenomenon where you just think, push a little harder, you know, but it's still like a little flat. And he says, instead of trying to come at those notes from below and really putting so much energy into trying to reach that note, try imagining you're a plane and you're landing on that note. So imagine you know that you can hit this note, and you're coming at it from above. So you're confident you can get there. You've done it before. Instead of trying to reach it, you just land on top of that note. And he demonstrated that in that video, and it makes total sense. It's like just, things like this. Maybe that can help a singer. Maybe they can approach it differently then. And instead of, concentrating so hard on getting up there, maybe it's actually not as hard if they just think about it differently. So knowing things like that really pays off. And there's a lot of tricks like that.
Yeah, it's really like unlimited. You'll find different, and pay attention to the singers you're recording as well. They might have their own tricks, and you're like, oh, I'm going to steal that and be able to recommend it to other people or other vocalists, or use it when maybe you're singing backups on the song. You need to grab all the help you can get.
Yeah, totally. All right, so the last one here on our list, and why is this number 11 here, by the way? Oh, you added one. You added the posture thing, so now it's not 10 anymore. Damn it, Malcolm. I want this to be 10 hacks. No, number 10 on our list is sing, and again, I'm curious to hear your thoughts there. I tried this after it's been shown to me, and I think it's really cool. Sing into Autotune live mode. Just for monitoring, not for the actual print. So what I mean by that is, there is in the Autotune plugin, and possibly other tuning plugins too, there is a live, or I don't know, but with Autotune definitely, there is a live mode where you can put it on the track you're recording, and you can sing through it without latency and tune in real time. And the reason for why that can be a cool trick, I don't do this every single time, but the reason why it can be a cool trick is, you do that and you put that tuned track on in the headphones of the singer, so they hear themselves tuned. What they will automatically do in most cases is they will adapt to that tuned version of themselves that they hear. So they sing it slightly out of pitch, but they hear it tuned, and they will automatically try to match that. Yeah, and they end up singing better for that reason. And you don't want to track the tuned version, because these things make mistakes, and and they also, sometimes there are artifacts and all that stuff. So you want to track the clean version, but maybe split up the track, or just put it on something that you can monitor. I can't really explain how to do that because the routing is different in every DAW, but I think we have an entire episode on how to track through plugins and the different ways to achieve that. But if you can set it up so that you can listen to the Autotune plugin and track the untuned version, that's a really cool trick, and I found it interesting and fascinating how that worked. But on the other hand, it makes total sense. Like when you sing together with somebody else and the other person is in tune, you try to match that. You realize when you're out of tune usually, and it's easier to sing along. If you sing along with a song on the radio, that's a lot easier to do in pitch, like in the correct key and all that, versus singing to the instrumental version without this reference. It's a lot harder to do it on your own than just to do it with somebody.
Yeah,
that's the same sort of effect. You hear the perfect voice and the perfect line, and you just sing along with that, basically. And automatically, you're going to sing better.
Yeah, everybody thinks they sound better when they're singing along to the radio, right? And it's kind of that's what's happening, really. It's funny. I use this quite a bit, actually. I use the Waves Tune Lite or something, I think it's called, or Waves Tune Real Time. And it's great, honestly. It's awesome for doing just this. And sometimes, I will say, there's just been a couple singers where this just doesn't work for them. It throws them right off. And they're like, what is happening? And it's like, don't worry, we'll just take that off and we go back to normal. But it's totally worth a shot. For some people, it was like a total game changer. They love it. They're hooked. So, and pretty new school idea, technique that's kind of more recently come into light. So if you haven't tried that, this is totally worth trying. You can get a free demo of one of these tuning plugins and see if it works for you.
Absolutely. All right. So that was it for our list here. So some of the things are general, some of the things are guitar specific, some are vocal specific, and most of those things apply to multiple different things, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. There's more I want to say, but I really want to keep Benny's list to 10 tuning hacks. And all the other ones I've got are kind of post-production related anyways.
Yeah.
So you know what? We should do a post-tuning episode, though. That's a good idea.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have done one, but I need to see what we've actually talked about there.
Yeah, you'll have to review that.
Tuning. I think it was vocal tuning specific. It was the T-Pain episode.
Right,
title.
yep, totally.
Yeah. But I agree. I agree. We should do a post-tuning one so that people know what we're actually talking about when we say fix things and what you can and can't fix and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Cool. Now, 2 bonus hacks here. I just added them as bonuses because I want them to be 10. So I think number 1 is do pre-production properly and clearly define and practice those melodies. Sounds obvious, but that's oftentimes the reason why singers have a hard time in the studio hitting those notes, because they've not practiced enough, or they haven't even defined the melodies clearly enough. Oftentimes they sing something, and then I'm like, can you do that again? I'm not sure I'm getting the melody. And then they do it again, and it's like different. And then we realize the problem is that they don't actually know what they're trying to sing. As weird as that sounds, but that happens. So you have to sort of know what you want to do. You have to define that. And that means doing proper pre-pro, getting into the session prepared, practicing that, also knowing if you actually can hit those notes. Sometimes people come in with something and the song is prepared, but they aren't, and then they figure out in the session that they can't actually reach those notes, or that it sounds weird or whatever. And do proper pre-pro, like get these things out of the way before the session, I think, is part of avoiding that problem.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of a bit of a disaster when you've realized during recording that you can't hit a note. It's like, well, this all could have been saved if we just like lowered it a semitone, right? Through pre-production, we would have discovered this. So, I mean, that can save you a lot of money and time, and you probably wouldn't recover from it. Like if you get that far into recording a song without realizing that you have to transpose it down, it probably will never get finished because nobody's going to redo all that work. So it's really important to catch that. Clearly defining melodies, I just want to like kind of highlight what that means. To me, that means that you could play it on another instrument. And so like you could recreate the vocal melody using a piano or a guitar. Those are the 2 most common. And, you know, people don't really think of those as the same. I think some people think of vocals more like a violin where it's more fluid, but really there is consonances in a vocal. So you've got, you know, solid note starts and timing, and by breaking it down into a piano or a guitar and kind of being able to play it, you'll better understand what those steps are. All of the best vocalists I record usually have a little like phone keyboard that they can just whip it out and be like, what was it? And figure it out exactly real quick.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Cool. And then we just have to say it. Bonus point, bonus hack number 2 here is you got to use fresh. Sorry, I messed it up. No. Bonus point. Leave it in, Thomas. I'm going to say it twice because people already know what I'm about to say. Bonus hack number 2 here. Fresh. Sorry.
Fresh?
Fresh strings and correct string gauges.
Yes.
So yeah, change your strings. Use new strings. And select the proper string gauges because that will drastically change, or that can be the reason for why your guitars are in tune or not.
Absolutely. Yet another reason to go listen to episode 47, Guitar Setup and String Choices with Diego. It is, that's the episode. If you need a refresher on how to make sure you're using the right strings.
Yes, exactly. And new ones.
Yeah, definitely new ones.
I just had this actually, by the way. Sorry, I have to just add it. I just had this where it wasn't strings, but it was drum skins, which is the same thing. Use new ones. Yeah. Where I'm about to mix a song for a band later, a record for a band later this year, and they were sending me. They record themselves, and they were sending me drum demos because last time we worked together, they were programming drums. This time they do real drums, and they wanted my input on whether or not that is actually good enough, like what they can pull off. And they sent it to me, and it was actually pretty well done. But I noticed that it sounded kind of dull and lifeless in the attack. And so my guess was like, this is probably done with old heads, but it was also just a demo. And so, okay. So I mentioned, just in case you weren't aware, you need to put on new drum heads when you record. And then they were like, yeah, I don't actually think that's the problem because these aren't too old. And I'm like, these aren't too old. It's definitely too old. You know? Like,
100% too old.
Yeah, exactly. So use new strings. Like, same thing here. Like new or not new. So, all right. That's it for today. Hope these hacks help. And we're going to see you next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.